Hello and welcome back to the Bird's Eye View podcast. We are here on Friday, June 20th with the Toronto Blue Jays coming off a series win over the Arizona Diamondbacks. I'm here with Zach Worden, joined as always by Jori Negin-Shecter. And Jori, they bounced back, swept by the Phillies. Really nice series win over the Diamondbacks. I think, you think about the 3-game stretch there. Obviously game one, the heroics, they're up against it. And then you get the Bo Bichette and Addison Barger back-to-back homers to walk it off. You get just a rout in game two of the series, and then Kevin Gausman struggles in game three. But Diamondbacks good team, tough to sweep good team. So overall, they kind of had a little bit of a dip against the Phillies, and now the vibes are back.
Yeah, definitely positive remarks with regards to that series, big series win. Jays at home have won 4 straight series, and the offense has been electric and looked that way this past series against the Diamondbacks. I mean, Barger continues to be a absolute menace, especially now moving him up into the 2-hole spot. That looks like a potential solution, a potential full-time thing, because Vladdy in the 3-hole, as much as that discourse is who knows, the results kind of speak for themselves, and maybe this is the top of your order right now. Imagine how long this lineup looks when Santander and Varsho make their way back. The offense humming a little bit right now.
You mentioned the home thing. Is the man in the white shirt back?
I mean, it's possible.
I saw
It's
this
not the man in
tweet.
the, you know what it is? It's the man in the white shirt. He's upped his game though. He's hacking the pitch comp systems
Yes,
now.
finally, they're cheating like everybody else
Yeah,
is.
instead of the fastball, curveball.
It's yeah, you like hack the frequencies and then you got the buzzers on and it's two buzzes for a fastball.
Exactly, exactly.
Um let's talk about though, you mentioned the top of the order switch. Addison Barge moves into the 2-hole, Vladdy moves into the 3-hole, and obviously Vladdy has like just weird career splits as far as, him being more comfortable hitting third. And I think it's one of those things that we've talked about before as like it's probably better for the team for him to be good hitting second. At the end of the day, like just him being good is obviously the number one important thing. So if he's most comfortable in the 3-hole, obviously it's not as ideal from like when you dive into the numbers as far as which spots in the order are more important to generating runs. But at the end of the day, like I mean, if he has a 900 OPS hitting third and a 760 hitting second, then you're obviously going to want to take the 900 OPS guy.
I would guess maybe it's something to do. It's so difficult to explain why it's the case. I mean, it's noise, but it's also a large sample size, so who knows? I wonder if it's something to do with maybe, when he comes up with runners in scoring position, he maybe gets fed a little bit more off-speed stuff, and maybe that's where he has success. I mean, he hits fastballs well regardless, so I don't know if maybe it's like pitch mix or something based on who maybe is on ahead of him. Maybe it's an opportunity to have more guys on base ahead of him, and maybe that changes the approach of opposing pitchers. There's got to be a reason why Vlad has had this much success. Maybe it's the pitch mix that he sees just in general in the 3-hole versus in the 2-hole. You know, Vlad with nobody on, one out, you can pitch him pretty differently to Vladdy, guy on, one out, or maybe like guy on second, or guy on, you know, runners on the corners. Like there's reason to believe this might be the case, but it doesn't make it any less confusing why it is the case.
Yeah, I know he said that like he feels more comfortable because he gets more time to like evaluate the pitcher. And I guess, maybe when you're hitting second behind Bo Bichette, there's not a lot of time to evaluate the pitcher because Bo's up there swinging. But the other thing is like you bat third in an inning once a game, right? Like it's the first inning where you're like maybe you'll do it again later in the game if that's the way that like the lineup unfolds, but you're only guaranteed to hit third or second once, right? So it's like the idea of like getting somebody higher in the order is that they like get up to the plate sooner. So it's weird though. Like I mean, I just pulled up his career numbers the career splits. So hitting second for his career, it's a 117 WRC plus, a 265 average, a 345 OBP, a 429 slug. And then hitting third, it's a 152 WRC plus, a 300 average, a 378 OBP, and a 539 slug. So
It's the difference between like Dalton Varsho and like Edwin Encarnacion. It's so bizarre.
it's one of those things. I guess, I think you just put him where he's comfortable and hopefully you unlock the best version of him. And I saw a tweet, I think it was from Chris Vac, and he was like, reason for Vlad mini breakout, facing Brandon Pfaadt and Eduardo Rodriguez or hitting third.
Who's to say, really?
I don't know. The Eduardo Rodriguez game, I was like kind of watching, I'm like, yeah, that guy might be cooked.
Yeah, that's a guy that has had his productive years, but the Diamondbacks signing a lefty that's past his expiration date, I can't say I've seen this movie before. Never mind Madison Bumgarner and oh gosh, I'm sure there's others, but I mean it's a kind of a bit of a Diamondbacks tradition.
Yeah, they nobody whiffs on free agent pitching signings like the Diamondbacks. So
Uh,
let's get it. I mean, other games though, I think like game one, crazy. Like we haven't seen that type of game. Obviously, what Loper Fido and Barger had the walk off, back-to-back walk off last year. But I think there was just it's a really nice way to kind of showcase what this team has been about this year, right? Like they're always kind of in a game. Shelby Miller's coming out. He hasn't given up basically any hits on his splitter this year, and then they both hit homers on the splitter. Miller had been really good, and then they kind of come back and do that. Like, I mean, I think that was just an insane moment. Like, I mean, you're watching, you're like, whoa, the Barger homer was so sick. The bat drop, the yell, like just everything about that moment, I think was really cool for them to kind of, be up against it, be up against like a 4 game win streak, and then have like those two guys step up like that.
yeah, the comeback hits this year, which has been a really nice revelation, and the power obviously is really huge. Jays were getting nothing. They had nothing going. I mean, obviously Vladdy and Bo had their moments, and Barger to a certain extent as well before the homer he doubled as well. But that was really like a big, I think, turning point moment for the Blue Jays, right? Like, leading in comeback wins is one thing, but to be doing it on the back-to-back homers is like a different thing altogether. It feels like something that a true contender is able to do. And now, obviously, it's only been a year, basically, less really, since they did this last time around, and Barger, of course, was involved. But, at that point, it was kind of a good story. It was Loper Fido and Barger. It was, oh, look, the future's bright. And it was probably like win 60, like 7. And they probably had about 80 something losses, right? So,
It was also against the Angels.
so for the Jays to do it against a good team, against a good pitcher, and it being the top of their lineup, their stars being their stars. And I do think at this point you can include Barger in that conversation. I think the metrics say so, the numbers say so. Basically, since the beginning of May, he's been one of the hottest hitters on the planet. I think that really says something about the makeup of this team, like you kind of said.
Yeah, it's just the way that those three guys hit through the first 2 games of the series. Like we've been talking about how well the depth has played and how well, Ernie Clement and Alejandro Kirk and George Springer and Tyler Heineman have been playing to kind of help carry this team to wins, and you've kind of been missing that group at the top, and you're kind of thinking, well, they're gonna need the top of the order to kind of be the big boys and kind of carry the load eventually. And you kind of get that in this series where I think it was obviously Bichette and Barger have the 2 big swings in that game, but Vladdy was also 3 for 4 with 3 RBIs in that game, and then the next game they combined for I think it was 8 hits in that 8-1 win. Like they carried the load, and that's something that they're obviously going to need, I think, going forward. I think if you're going to be a contender, a team that plans on doing damage in October, they're going to need Bo and Vlad, and then to a certain extent, alongside those two, Anthony Santander and Addison Barger, to be difference makers.
Yeah, the word has always been that if you're gonna do damage and in October, you got to be able to smash the baseball. And something that the Jays are going to be able to do this year is smash baseballs. And like I kind of said earlier, if Santander comes back and they get him right, and if Varsho comes back and they get him right, and all of a sudden that's a lot of length in the lineup and potentially a really competent group, basically one through about seven or eight, minus maybe a handful of dudes that are there because of their defensive prowess, right? And the Jays this year, that move to bring offense, to actively be out there smashing baseballs has been a revelation, as we've outlined several times over the past few episodes.
It's I mean, you look at the standings and they are like firmly in a wild card position at this point. I believe it's 6 games above 500 right now. They're 3 games back of the Yankees in the division. Of course, as the Blue Jays have heated up here, a lot of other teams in the division have too. The Rays have been playing well. The Red Sox got themselves back above 500. The Orioles are playing like a little bit better. They're, obviously still super far out, but just kind of disappointed that way. But the one team that has kind of fallen back to the pack is the Yankees, which I think it's interesting because the division 3 weeks ago you probably don't think it's a conversation, and now you're like, well, here we are, 3 games out of a division, a month away from the deadline, a little more over than a month away at this point. Like there's a real opportunity there to take a spot from the Yankees, and you still have a bunch of games against them remaining. I think the Rays are due for kind of a second half fall off because of how much they're going to be on the road in the second half, right? Like it's because of their schedule playing at Steinbrenner. They're set to like basically be on the road 75% of the time in the second half. So I think there's going to be a little bit of a of a fade back for them. So I really do think, it's going to be interesting to see how if the Blue Jays can really take a shot at the division here.
Yeah, the Rays are going to turn into like a barnstorming team at this point, right? It's going to be a totally different schedule for them in the second half. And it should open up some opportunities for the Blue Jays. But to be right in the mix, they're what, 3 games back? To be in that conversation, to be right there, right on the precipice. Listen, the Yankees sputtered. They're not going to sputter like this so dramatically. However, it does open up some opportunities, like you said. And they did this against some pretty bad teams. I mean, the Halos really took it to them. So for the Jays to now have this, in reality, manageable gap, it feels super plausible that they could take a run of the division. Now, something that I want to discuss a little bit, something I want to bring up. If you notice the rest of the teams in a playoff position, they're all pretty comfortably in the positive run differential
Yeah, I did
discussion.
notice this, yes.
And the Jays are still below water. Now, it should be noted that since about May 1st, they are one of the top 5 to 10 teams in baseball by run differential. They were like minus 40 for a while there, and they've crept back up. So a lot of that is, April and parts of May versus basically mid-May onwards, where it's really a different team. So I guess my question to you would be, how much does that concern you? Like, do you look at their Pythag right now and fear regression, or do you think that with the way they've been producing, the regression's more likely to come on the Pythag side and likely to catch up to their actual record?
Yeah, I mean, I think you look at the way that the season has unfold. There's of course going to be recency bias, right? Because they've played so much better in the last month or so here versus how they played at the beginning of the year, and it's kind of like one of those things. That's where it's like those games did happen, so you can't ignore them, right? But I think when you look at what this team has done, like they've kind of flipped the narrative about what they are. Like the offenses, remember that stretch that we were talking about early in the year, right? Where they were scoring 1, 2 runs a game. They were, getting swept by the Astros. You think back to kind of the way that the year began when it was like Andres Jimenez carrying the load. Anthony Santander couldn't get a hit to save his life. Like there was just, nothing going on for this team, and the pitching was kind of dragging them. And now all of a sudden, like it's the offense has been great and the starting pitching is the question. So I think when you look at their run differential, like to me, I assume it'll continue to improve the way if their offense continues to swing it well. But again, I think that they do have issues to figure out, right? Like their starting pitching has been an issue. I think you look at like Kevin Gausman and Jose Barrios, like having been fairly inconsistent. Gossman's June has been poor for him.
7 ERA in the month. I mean, poor probably
Yeah,
undersells it.
I was generous, trying to be nice, but yeah, no, I think you kind of look at if they are able to like kind of get some more stability from the rotation. Eric Lauer has been a revelation for them. If Kevin Gausman and Jose Barrios are able to kind of stabilize, I think Bassett's been pretty consistent for them. If Scherzer returns and gives you, 5 solid innings every start, like I think that you'll start to see that number creep back towards the positives. But there this isn't a team without some holes right now, and I think that you look at the games where things kind of go awry, and it does stem from the pitching. So we'll kind of see.
Yeah. Now, of course, there's going to be opportunities to improve that. Uh, I mean, I've been tossing names at you basically all week in the group chat, kind of being like, who's the answer here? And I have confidence they'll make an effort to do so. I'm not really sure that they'll have the bullets to do so. I mean, you think of the farm system, there's been a lot of good stories,
Yeah.
but I don't know if that is going to translate into actual trade value come July. But I I mean, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I have faith in this front office to do what they need to do. And I mean, they have done well at deadlines in the past. You look at obviously the Barrios deal. That's probably their biggest move they've made. There was the pure rental in Jordan Hicks. And of course, during that deadline, we were kind of like, that's not enough to headline a deadline, but it was still a big swing. And then, of course, last year they did really well in basically turning all of their expiring assets into futures, and they've found a couple of gems. So that's somewhere that there's definitely some confidence. Now the question becomes, can they fix the starting rotation, which is something they haven't really been asked to do in the past because they have a type. You look at
Yeah.
the Barrios, you look at the Gosman, you look at the Bassett, maybe those first and last ones specifically, they like to lean on their defense to elevate guys. So, you wonder if a true ace type is maybe even on the menu, but I definitely feel confident that this front office is going to make a significant run at starting pitching in the next basically 30 days.
Yeah, before they even do that, right? Like they do have like their own things to figure out. I think we can talk a little bit about Scherzer and his Buffalo starts. Like he was really good the other day in Buffalo. I think he carried like a no hitter into his last inning of work before he left with the pitch count thing there. And like I mean, obviously it is AAA, and I think that Scherzer would tell you himself that he doesn't care about the results. But what he's done in a couple games with Buffalo, right? Like I think it's 12 strikeouts in like 8 innings. So the spring training whiff performances from him feel like years ago, but I think that you look at him coming back and hopefully you're able to get something there, right? He was obviously you paid him $15 million, so you got to get some value there. Um, and then you look at Eric Lauer. I mean, it's an interesting conversation. Like they're gonna have to add starting pitching either way. I think even if Scherzer comes back, like let's say Scherzer comes back before the deadline and gives you 5 starts, gives up like 4 runs in those starts and strikes out 30, I still think you got to add a starting pitching because you know what the mistake that they made in the offseason with this Scherzer thing was kind of locking themselves into like those five guys, right? And assuming that those five were going to kind of carry the load and they didn't really backfill there. So if they learn from their mistakes, it's going to be to have too much pitching to go down the stretch, right? Like
Oh,
if
for
if
sure.
if Scherzer comes back and shoves, Eric Lauer continues to pitch well, they still got to add somebody, like even if it's a Merrill Kelly, and then you go and you figure it out from there. Because you can't realistically go into the stretch relying on Max Scherzer to stay healthy, I think, at this point.
No, and I wonder if they even go to a six-man rotation because it's not like anybody on the starting
Yeah.
pitching side demands to start every fifth day, right? You add a guy like a Merrill Kelly, and it's not the sexiest name out there, but it gives you that additional time for Scherzer to get healthy. Gosman tends to pitch a lot better on that extra day of rest. It gives you more time to, you know, get Lauer in and maybe give him kind of a little bit less of a workload. And there's just enough benefits there where it would make a lot of sense. Now, if you add a superstar, like if you add a legitimate ace, that's not going to be something you're going to do. You're not going to want to spend all these assets on a Freddie Peralta and then proceed to have him pitch once every 6 days. But that's something that if they do go out and end up with maybe a B or a C tier guy, that's when you kind of look at that as a potential option, right? Because to me, I don't think you kick Lauer to the bullpen. I think he's been effective enough as a starter that you can ride him until he no longer no longer works.
You're gonna
Scherzer is a
Easton
guy
Lucas
that
him basically.
exactly. Scherzer's not going to move to the bullpen. That's just not going to happen. Neither are any of the three guys that have been largely effective in larger chunks this year. So at that point, you're again, like you said, you're kind of a core, like it's locked in there. So you're gonna have to figure out exactly what you plan to do with, whoever gets added to that rotation in the next month.
Part of the conversation that has kind of opened up is obviously Bowden Francis's struggles, and we went long on that last time we recorded. But obviously, since then, he has been placed on the injured list with a shoulder impingement, which is that a little bit of
Suckitis.
glad you said it, so I didn't have to. And of course, Eric Swanson gets designated for assignment at the same time. We could start with Francis. What do you think that he does during this IL stint, and what do you look for when he kind of comes back?
I mean, I think he goes full Aaron Rodgers ayahuasca trip and tries to fix what's going wrong. No, it's gonna have to be a pretty substantial change, right? The homers have been just a beyond an issue, right? And it's a shame because he's a guy that was a really good story for the Blue Jays last year. And even for the early parts of this year, like you said, we went heavy on it last time. We talked about it. This is a guy that carried a no-hitter pretty deep into a ball game this season. They're gonna have to get him right, and you let him kind of fix his stuff. He spends maybe, 2 or 3 weeks on the injured list. Then maybe he gets instead of optioning him, maybe you're able to rehab assignment him and maybe he throws a couple outings there. And then, it's August and you see how he is. And then maybe he gets added back into the discussion, right? And then you kind of build that pitching depth like you kind of said earlier, right? And he becomes part of that equation because right now, it's not good enough to be a rotation piece, but come August, he's going to be in the discussion. Manoa's going to be in the
Yeah.
discussion. Whoever they added the deadline is going to be in the discussion. There's going to be a pretty substantial backlog there, and it's going to be a different looking pitching group come August. Now they need, like we just said extensively, they need someone. They need to add to that group. They need someone that they feel comfortable pitching like a game one of a wild card
Yeah.
series. And
Yeah.
if they can't get that, at least a guy that can pitch in a wild card series. Um, I just don't know if anyone they have to offer right now is part of that.
I think that, the names you can throw out as many as you want. It's really going to just be unclear at this point who's going to be available because, there's so much that can happen in the next month, right? Like the Royals could go 10 and 20 in the next month, and then you're looking at like a Chris Bubich maybe being available, or a Seth Lugo, or they could go 20 and 10, and then all that conversation would be for naught, right? Or the Rangers, can totally flip it around, and Nate Eovaldi's not a guy that you're looking at, or the Cardinals could fall out, and maybe Sonny Gray's on the table, or the Orioles. Like there's just so many different scenarios that could come up, right? So it's tough to really like lock down on any pitchers that are in the conversation right now, but realistically, I think the ideal scenario for this Blue Jays team is you're going into September with Jose Barrios, Chris Bassett, Kevin Gossman as your, three because they've been so steady. Max Scherzer in the mix, Alek Manoah, like you mentioned, in the mix, Eric Lauer in the mix, um, and your other trade deadline and a trade deadline guy added
Yeah.
kind of into that mix, right? Like I think that that's the scenario that you want is just to have like so many options so that when, a potential postseason series does roll around, you can mix and match and maybe just go with the guys who are throwing well as you go into that series.
So here's a hypothetical for you. Here's a question for you. And I want you to pull up the standings right now, pull up the wild card standings and take a look at who's where and whatnot. If there was one team for you that you could basically wave a magic wand and have them go, 10 and 20 over the next month to ensure that whoever is available is part of that team or becomes available. Who would you want to struggle over the next month for the Jays to target?
I mean, I think it's the Brewers, right? Like I think we're all pretty Freddie Peralta pilled by this point. Like I think he's probably the guy. I think the Cardinals as well. Like I think Sonny Gray, I know he has a no trade clause, but I think he would be pretty interesting. Like he's pretty quietly been one of the best pitchers in baseball. I think he's top 10 in Sierra and K minus BB. So like it's a really good pitcher there. I think that those are the two that I would probably look at and be like those are the two that you want to fall out of contention.
Yeah. So no, like you wouldn't be kind of licking your chops at like a Uvalde or
I
I mean
mean,
you look at like a Merrill Kelly or a Zach Allen.
like yeah, I like we talked about this like Zach Gallen. They sold his arm for that World Series run. Like he threw, it was like 260 innings that year, and he just kind of hasn't been the same guy since. I think Merrill Kelly is like fairly interesting. Again, I don't think he's a top of the rotation guy, right? And that's kind of what you're looking for because you already have these like two, three, four types. So, I think you're kind of looking for that one. Eovaldi's interesting. Again, like just kind of some injury concerns there, so I'm not sure. I believe he's on the IL right now, so I think the Rangers would be, he'd be a guy that you'd put in that conversation if they were to fall out significantly from the run. But I mean, who are you looking at that you want?
I mean, you mentioned Peralta. That's obviously a guy. Um, I think the Royals are super interesting. Bubic would be probably really hard to get them to separate from, but that would be a guy that I genuinely would believe that could be a top of the rotation type. And to maybe a lesser extent, Seth Lugo, I think, is really compelling, and I think he matches the mold that the Jays kind of tend to target. And wouldn't really be an ace type, but you can kind of, you can kind of gaslight yourself into kind of believing it. I mean, obviously got some Cy Young votes last year,
I think he
was among the
finished second in
finalists.
Cy Young last year.
Exactly. So, has had success. Don't look at his StatCast page. I mean, that's only going to hurt you.
He's
But
like he's like
he's like
Chris Bassett
lefty,
though, right?
yeah.
Like he
He's a
throws
lefty Chris
11
Bassett.
different pitches a game. He throws righty though.
Is he a righty?
Yeah,
So he's Chris Bassett then.
but he has gotten better results the last couple of years.
Yeah, so I mean, it would be a guy that I'm sure. I mean, the Jays took a run at him when he was a free agent, was the report, and he would definitely fit the mold. He also has another year left on his deal, so it's possible. It's so funny. Lugo feels like such a lefty because he's like a crafty lefty,
Yeah.
but he's not. He's not righty.
Well, he has a player option for next year, so I would imagine would be opting out.
You think? I mean,
He's 35. He has been hurt this year, but he's been like fairly effective. I mean, how is he going to get more than $15 million on the free agent market? Like I would assume so.
probably,
I mean,
but
Max Scherzer just got 15 and a half.
yeah. Yeah, no, so he'll probably get more than that, but I don't know how much term he's gonna get. Like he might be able to add another year, but I'm not even
If he
sure.
gets like 236.
Yeah, then I mean for him it's an easy it's a non discussion, right?
Yeah.
It's an obvious opt out. Um so maybe he is just a pure rental type. I mean maybe you go out and you get him in the in the winter, excuse me. Maybe that's a target.
Well, you are going to need to replace Chris Bassett. So, well, maybe. Well, maybe they'll bring him back. Who knows?
This episode of the Bird's Eye View podcast is brought to you by BioSteel. Use code Bird's Eye View at checkout for 20% off your order at biosteel.ca. Again, that's code Bird's Eye View at checkout for 20% off your order. For all your high performance hydration needs, visit biosteel.ca. Thank you again to BioSteel for sponsoring today's episode.
Let's talk about Gosman though. Obviously, the June struggles have been so significant. The fastball has kind of been the main culprit there. Like we talked about with Thomas Hall. I guess it was about a month ago at this point, like how good that his splitter had been, and it had kind of been a mini renaissance for him, looking like the Cy Young version of himself. But now we're going on a stretch here where the fastball's been getting hammered, and the question marks are kind of there about what is.
The velo
Uh,
is down too, if I recall, yes?
I'm not 100% sure. I can pull it up here quick if you want to go on if you have any concerns.
I mean, do I have any concerns? Well, certainly not great in terms of him having a 7 ERA and the command as well. I think you mentioned that the fastball has not been great and the command hasn't been great. And John Schneider kind of said it post game too. He was like he's not getting himself into advantageous counts. He's falling behind hitters, and when he's falling behind hitters, you can kind of sit on the splitter and you can kind of spit on it because the whole idea of the splitter is that it dives out of the strike zone when it's down in the zone. So it's not somewhere that the guy can hit it. So the guy can just look off anything down in the zone for him. So, if I'm the Jays and you have Gosman like this, that becomes to me like a major concern. You had him almost as like an ace type in May, and it looked like ultimately, like it's going to be the thing that costs them the assets that they're going to have to trade, right? If Gosman had been succeeding, if he had continued his May into June, we'd be having a very different discussion. But I think just the command and the general struggles for him are coming at a really inopportune time.
Yeah, so it's the splitter velocity that's actually been down this month, which is interesting. The
Uh,
fastball's been kind of like, a little bit up and down, but like fairly consistent in like the 93 to 95 range over the month here. So, I mean, I don't know. I guess we'll see. He has obviously been a guy who's been a two pitch guy for so long, and maybe we're seeing the velo drops a little bit. And I think you watched the Diamondbacks start yesterday. Like they were
well,
really
they
good
they
at
hit the
like
slider. I think was Eugenio. I think hit one of them out. I
yeah.
think on a slider.
Yeah, and I think even too, like you kind of watch it, like they were really patient against him. Like there
Yeah.
was there was a lot of like good takes, and for him, like when he was at his best, he was like fastballs high in the zone. He would get a lot of like fastball takes at the knees, which I think was like when he was at his best, he would be getting those fastballs like on the black at the bottom because hitters think they're a splitter, right? So they
Mhm.
they see that pitch at the bottom, they're just going to take it, and he puts a fastball there, and then he throws the splitter, and they have to swing. So. I think you just kind of see like they're just kind of the sharpness isn't quite there. So
No. And now what's your confidence at him getting back to being an effective guy this year is the other question.
yeah, I think he's at this point it's fairly clear that the 2023 Kevin Gossman isn't walking through the door.
No.
And that's fine, right? Like he is 34 now. So, that you don't have to be the
That
Cy
was
Young
priced
contender.
in. That was part of the discussion when
Yeah.
you
Yeah, so I think like it's fine. I think what you really want is for him to kind of be the version of himself that he was early in the year, right? Like maybe not getting a ton of swing and miss. Obviously, the swing and miss is kind of what his game is built on, but for him, I don't think that you're looking for like a 3 ERA guy now. You're looking for like a 3.7 ERA guy.
Yeah. Yeah. But the problem is here is, I mean, everything just kind of creeps up. It just becomes a bit of a. They're lucky their offense is going right now, but if it fades, oh brother.
Yeah, we'll see. we'll see. I think he's a guy that's earned the benefit of the doubt. So we'll give him,
Yeah, if there's any
you
guy on
know,
the Jays in terms of the pitching staff, right? I mean, that's your guy.
yeah. Um, a guy who is, I think we should talk about because obviously Eric Swanson designated for assignment. The year hasn't gone great for him. Obviously, has dealt with physical stuff, has dealt with stuff off the field. For a guy who was like so important to this team in 2023, it like really sucks the way that it unfolded here.
The worst people you know are all over the Teo trade again, which to me is so dumb. It's honestly, it's like aggravating overhearing people and being like, "Oh, the Teoscar trade, what a disaster!" That this guy hit free agency twice after that trade. This guy was a Mariner, was got outperformed by Eric Swanson as a Mariner. This guy was not a good baseball player. Went to the team that literally develops like everybody. When you go to the Dodgers, you turn into a star. And of course, he turned into a star. And he signed a 1 year deal with them. The Jays made a run at him, but weren't willing to, make a big, huge offer on him. No kidding. The guy led the league in strikeouts in 2023, was it? Right? So, of course, you're not going to give him, 20, $25 million when you're banking on defense being the backbone of your team. And then, of course, they had the opportunity last year to sign him. Would have been signing him kind of at the peak of their value. And yes, he's been good this year. Yes, he's been effective. But the Jays wouldn't have had him regardless. They would have had to extend him regardless. This is
And
not
what
the
the report was
same,
what, 5/120?
which would have been a bad contract. I'm sorry, would not have been a good contract to give him. That giving him that deal is a huge, it prevents you from adding substantially on the pitching side. You think about how much money they invested in their pitching, and
Yeah.
obviously this year there's been struggles, but by and large, basically the entirety of the Mark Shapiro, Ross Atkins competitive window, the pitching has been something that they've really relied on consistently. So to me, it's so, so, so stupid when people are like, "Oh, the Teoscar," and then they're like, "Oh, it's real too," and oh, it's just shut up. It's totally unrelated. You were trading Teoscar's final year of team control. You did not trade Teoscar Hernandez's entire career.
There are so many layers to that conversation. So the Blue Jays don't make the playoffs in 2023 without Eric Swanson.
Oh, Eric Swanson was a top like
He
two
was
arm
like
on the
he
Jays, right?
he was like what Cade Smith was last year for the Blue Jays in I guess it was
And
2023.
he was good. And then,
Yeah.
well, it was injured at the end of the day. He basically was hurt a ton and dealt with enormous tragedy. Then, of course, the second half of last season was really effective
Yeah.
again, but just got blown up so much in the first half, which of course skewed the numbers. And then this year, also, should be noted, 6 inning sample. The thing is, though, is that you can't get him right because you don't have the optionability, you don't have the flexibility,
I
you don't have
think
the time to be
I
patient with
yeah,
him.
I think that's a big thing too, right? Like Schneider said that they're in a different position this year, right? Like if they were, if Swanson came back while they were struggling early in the year, like I think he probably gets more than 5 1/3 before getting DFA'd, right? So hopefully he lands on his feet.
I'm
Obviously,
sure he'll be traded in the next couple
like
of days.
he
That's a
he'll
guy that
he'll find a spot for sure.
100%. That guy is not going to
He'll be
clear
he'll be a
waivers.
Tampa Bay Ray.
Oh my God, the way that like screams.
Uh,
Listen,
the
the
worst people when Eric Swanson gets traded to the Rays are going to be like, of course, the Blue Jays don't want him, so one of the best pitching development teams wants him.
oh my God, oh Lord, it's giving Kevin Biggio DFA.
Hey, that Kevin Biggio trade for Braden Fisher,
It's looking like a
it's looking
move.
pretty good. It's looking pretty good. Fisher's been really excellent, and we've obviously done a lot of bullpen talk. One thing I guess before we go that I did want to touch on was the Vancouver Canadians. Obviously they don't end up winning the first half, but they go on a franchise record 11 game win streak. Really impressive. They were kind of, out of the race, and then you go on an 11 game heater and you come one game away from clinching. Just really cool stuff from them this month. I think it's, it's notable that they did it with Arjun not being a world beater, right? Yeah, I mean, it's always nice to see. It's one of the things we talk about a lot, like in the minors, team success isn't always the priority, but really fun to see them go on a run.
Yeah, and we've heard in the past that when that team's humming, it's a really cool atmosphere, obviously, and it's a really fun place to play. I think the really exciting thing is you look at the guys that had success with them, obviously, in this first half. I look at the guys like Cal Steven, who really turned it on after a bit of a maybe hiccup, obviously, to start. Gage Sandifer has continued to be just an absolute menace. Like, it's been a lot of, prospecty types that have really
Yeah.
driven that team to success. Obviously, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I don't know exactly how this team finished the season, but I can tell you that the pitching, you're getting these reports every couple days. This guy pitched really well. This guy pitched really well. This guy pitched really well. It's encouraging.
One interesting name. I mean, there was obviously a bunch of guys. Obviously, Nick Goodwin, he won Northwest Player of the Week in the middle of this. But Cutter Coffee coming around in the
Another
month
deadline guy.
in the month of June. He's got an OPS over 1,000. He's hitting 391. He's got 10 extra base hits. At the time of the Danny Jansen trade, he was kind of the headliner. I think he was like the number one piece that you looked at, and he's a guy who just turned 21. So, um, I think the struggles that he had since he got to Vancouver, you're concerned about them, but this is still a young guy, and I'm pretty intrigued to see if he's able to kind of get himself back on track here because there is a lot of raw power there, and as a young hitter, like if he can kind of figure it out, I think that there's a world where he does kind of put himself back on the map as a prospect type.
Yeah, and I think it's just super encouraging to have another guy, especially on the hitting side, because that hasn't been as much of a story this year. Another guy just
Yeah.
having a good stretch, a guy that's kind of made himself a talking point, right? It's really, I think, encouraging that you've got this kind of group of guys, you've got this nice little network of guys. They're not all going to be stars, but you have the Robertsons, and he's obviously the higher minors
Yeah.
version of a guy like a Coffee, or you look at obviously all the pitchers, right? Like you just need guys that look like they're showing signs of progression. And that to me is all you can really ask.
Fun, fun with stats. Of any player with at least 100 plate appearances this year, Javon Ward, highest walk rate in the minors. And this month he's worked 23 walks. So, um, sometimes it's not ideal to be passive in the minor leagues because you do have to show that you can hit. But for him, he's kind of a cool player. So just shout out to him for his ability to get on base.
Another guy, another good story. Just again, just stack those good stories on each other,
Yes.
and you know, at worst, maybe they're pieces in a Freddie Peralta trade.
Yes, that would be ideal, I think, when you get those types in those trades. Before we run here, any thoughts on the upcoming White Sox series? I think a chance for them to put a couple more wins between them and the 500 line.
Big, 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 big chance. And the whole schedule as a whole, like it's going to soften up, I think, a little bit here. And there's an
Yeah.
opportunity to really be effective. Obviously, you've got the July 1st series against the Yankees. That one, have your nice red Sharpie circle in that one more than once or twice. And I guess we'll see. It's going to be an exciting couple weeks here.
We'll see. It is going to be an exciting couple weeks as we officially get into trade deadline season. The talks are already heating up, as you can tell based on our conversation here today. But that is going to do it for us here today at the Bird's Eye View Podcast. Make sure to hit the subscribe and like buttons if you're watching on YouTube. You can find us there at the Bird's Eye View Podcast. If you're listening along on the audio provider of your choice, make sure to drop a follow and a review. You can follow us all on Twitter. I am at Worden_Zach. Jori is at Jori Negin-Shecter, and the pod is at BEV_pod. Thank you so much for listening.